I think it's time that we stop looking at the economy purely in terms of the GDP.
It should not matter which income group an individual is from. Each person should have access to quality healthcare, housing, education, etc.
In a small business like mine, decentralization of power can only cause chaos.
We can't be operated with complete dictatorship way of working or an absolute collaborative way of working.
Until we address the burden that the pandemic has taken on the nation's poor, we cannot call our economy a success.
India has one of the lowest percentage of its adults employed. Our educational system is out of tune with the times, and if we don't course correct soon, we're going to be living in a polarized nation between a globalized elite and a vast hinterland of deprivation.
In order to be inspired by tomorrow's India, I think 4 things are vital. 1, we must ensure new economic focus on health and food security. The 2nd, preserving nature. The 3rd, leading the world into a new convention that ensures not only greater scrutiny on all bio-research, but ends the possibility of bio-warfare. And 4th, building the South Asian dream. India's neighborhood cannot be its weakness, it must become its strength.
Be inspired. The new leaders, facilitating the firefly-up model for systemic change of economies. Arun Maira in conversation with Adam Kahane. The top-down leadership approach, with solutions by experts often disconnected from ground truths and people, is the wrong way to create resilient societies. Complex global problems require local solutions, implemented collaboratively by communities, keeping the big picture in mind. Therefore, a new model of leadership is required for the future. A firefly-up model in which leaders facilitate better collaboration among stakeholders rather than direct them against their will. Adam Kahane is a Director of Reos Partners, an international social enterprise that helps people move forward together on their most important and intractable issues. A leading organizer, designer, and facilitator of processes through which business, government, and civil society leaders can work together to address such challenges, Adam has worked in more than 50 countries in every part of the world. He is the author of Solving Tough Problems, an open way of talking, listening, and creating new realities. In his career spanning 5 decades, Arun Maira has led several organizations, including the Boston Consulting Group in India, the Tata Group at various important positions, Arthur D. Little Incorporated and its subsidiary Innovation Associates. He has a unique combination of hands-on leadership roles in the private, government, and social sectors. In 2009, Mr. Maira was appointed a member of India's Planning Commission. His most recent book is A Billion Fireflies: Critical Conversations to Shape a New Post-Pandemic World.
Is what have you learned about how to enable people to work more effectively together to produce outcomes that they want?
For me, this is the very basic starting point, is that collaboration is always a choice, that we can't work on everything with everybody. That would be literally impossible. So the question isn't whether we're going to collaborate or not, but with whom do we need to collaborate on what? And to recognize that collaboration is only one of the options. In many cases, we just do things the way we want to do things, using whatever authority or power or force we have. Other times we can't change the way things are, we just adapt. And other times we quit. We emigrate or get a divorce or quit our job. And to understand collaboration as a fourth option. And so, yes, my vocation and my profession has been when people want to collaborate, which is only in certain circumstances, how to help them do that more effectively, and to recognize that collaboration is always a struggle or always a tension. In English, the word actually has 2 opposite meanings. One meaning, which is, I guess, the one you're using, simply means to work together. But the other very frequent reference for the word collaborate is when people talk about collaborators in the Second World War, for example, the French citizens who supported the Nazi occupiers were called collaborators. And in that sense, it means the worst kind of treason. And the reason I focus on these two opposite meanings is I don't think this is incidental. I think this is the basic tension, that on the one hand, I think I want to work with others, even people who are very different from me, or I may not agree with or like or trust, because I think I need to get where I'm trying to go. And at the same time, I'm always worried, am I at risk of betraying what I stand for? Or so that's the tension. And yes, my work has been how to help people navigate that tension, how to help them collaborate effectively rather than defaulting to just pushing for it to be the way I want it to be. So that for me is the basic starting point.
Well, Adam, you said, you make a choice yourself when you are invited to help people who've chosen to collaborate about what is their objective, what is it they're going to produce by collaborating together. Could you be collaborating with a purpose which doesn't appeal to your heart and mind?
What for me is the deciding point is not the cause, but rather the pleasure and honor and energy of working with people who are really trying to do something that they care about. And so that for me is that's what gives me energy and pleasure, is that when the people who are coming together are themselves there by choice, rather than because their boss told them to, they may wish they could sort this problem out on their own, but anyhow, they have decided that at least they should try to work with these others over whom they do not have authority. And so they're there by choice. And I often think that the best part about my professional life or my vocation, however you want to put it, is that I get to work about 100% of the time with people who care about something and are trying to make a difference and want help to do so. So I've tended to get involved in issues of high conflict and high complexity, whether it's peace processes or environmental processes or very stuck issues of whether it's climate change or racial oppression or indigenous rights, and those are all interesting to me. But what's really interesting to me is working with people who really care.
I'm just contrasting my two experiences, deep experiences with you. One was about what I learned about South Africa as a country, in which there was, big power issues within the country, political power and historically, which had to be adjusted between the people to readjust the power amongst them. And then you had this Bhavishya project, which was like a horizontal issue. It was like, one issue cutting across many other issues in India. So you had a malnutrition issue, we of course had a climate issue and so on. And experts came together around the malnutrition issue. I've had a sneak preview of your book, and you point out that there are horizontal issues, and they seem to be somehow more difficult to work with unless one addresses the context within which those issues have to be addressed. So using like a vertical power dimension within systems also. And so the South Africa experience seemed to be the whole system together in a way, not just particular issues. So could you explain to me, because I'm still struggling with this.
I'm not so much talking about vertical and horizontal issues, I'm talking about vertical and horizontal approaches. The vertical approach to working with a group says primarily, let's think about the situation as a whole. Let's leave our individual agendas and interests at the door, Let's talk about what's best for the country or the children or the environment or the organization. So it's vertical in the sense that there's a hierarchy of the larger over the smaller and the higher over the lower. And that's a perfectly normal way to work, and it has lots of advantages. The big advantage being that this is how you bring people together and create coordination and cohesion. The downside of the vertical approach is rigidity and domination, which is, I say to you, look, I don't care about your organization or your personal issue or your expertise. I only want to talk about what's good for the whole. I remember talking about this years ago with somebody in the medical field, and they said, you know why facilitation is so difficult in medical setting? It's because whenever you're really getting to the difficult issues about between doctors and nurses or professionals and patients, somebody will say, let's just focus on the patients. And it's a completely counterproductive invocation, because we had never forgotten the patients. But to say let's just focus on the patients or let's just focus on the good of the whole means I'm not going to pay attention to your issues as a nurse or your issues as an anesthesiologist, etc. So that's what I call the vertical approach. And yes, it dominates in organizations, but it's always there. The other opposite approach, which I think you and I have tended towards, partly in reaction to the downside of the vertical, is what I call the horizontal approach. And here, the essence is everybody's equal. Everybody has an equal voice. Nobody is above anybody else. Nobody's interests are above anybody else. The upside of the horizontal approach is it allows autonomy and variety. The downside is that it can produce fragmentation, everybody just doing their own thing, or gridlock, no way to move forward. And so my point is that it's always a mistake to choose either the vertical or the horizontal. And you and I have focused a lot on horizontal issues. The firefly metaphor is a horizontal metaphor. Bhavisya was a horizontal project. We had, whatever it was, 35 stakeholder leaders literally sitting in a circle. But in a way, it was deceptive. Just because people sit in a circle doesn't mean they really consider themselves equal, or that you're really using the best knowledge in the group. So my point is that if we're going to move forward together, we can't choose to use either the vertical approach or the horizontal approach. We have to move back and forth between them. And this is not at all straightforward. Some people are only good at the vertical, some people are only good at the horizontal. But I think if we're going to be effective at helping people work together to do what they can't do separately, we have to learn to employ both approaches alternately.
Mm-hmm. You know, in Bhavisya, you'd allowed me to sort of listen into you. This issue came out that every organization constructs itself around a vertical hierarchical system so that it can focus and deploy its resources most effectively against causes for which the organization was set up, right? And if someone within the organization cares for something differently and then becomes part of a lateral collaborative, he cannot or she cannot bring the collective resources of the entire group together. And then the frustration came that people at the top say they want to do this, but the actual work is being done by others. And it doesn't work.
But I think this is the challenge, that you need the energy of the horizontal, which means people bringing their caring and their skill and their commitment and their agency. And you also need the vertical capacity to execute. And the reason why many collaborations turn into conversations that don't lead anywhere is they don't understand the how to employ both the vertical and the horizontal, or as I call it in a different context, both power and love. And and this is always always a tension. And I guess maybe that's the biggest lesson I've drawn from this work, and relates to a question I want to ask you, if I may. I'm wondering what you personally have experienced to be not the straightforward parts, but the challenging parts, the problematic parts for you in trying to do this work of facilitating.
When I got into India, there was this sort of crisis in the background, as it were, which many of us were noticing. The environmental crisis, the poverty crisis, and so on. But there was no compelling reason for people to come together, it seemed, as a group together to do something about it. So I wanted to start by evoking from them why they're here in the first place. I mean, you could do many other things at that time. And they expressed what they cared about, and some cared about, children, or they just cared about the poverty, and etc. And something brought them together. And then he said, "But why is this happening? I mean, we are part of a system." So to use, and you know that well, Donald Meadows' expression of every system is perfectly designed to produce the results it's presently producing. So let's look at the system. Why is it that we are in this position in India, that there are many people who care, and maybe they're doing good things in their own, let's call them verticals, and yet the system is not working together. So why is so? Why is so? So that asking the question about why, what is happening here and why is it happening, is a very educative question for everybody. And you begin to have to ask others, what is your perspective? You also are in the same system, and you might be seeing things somewhat differently to me. So let's listen to each other. So listening to people not like oneself enables one to form a collective view of the system and what's happening in the system. That's a necessary starting point. Being mindful that just working on that one part is not going to even change that part, because pressures from other parts are going to come onto it. So then starting to enroll others in a process to say, if you were to support us a bit, we will support you in what you are doing. So you start getting a movement upwards.
I'm curious about what the principles or orientations that you would point to in the work that you and I are both trying to do.
And Mahatma Gandhi had this principle that for policymakers, that if you're going to take any tough decision, and you should be having to take many if you're a real serious policymaker, think about the benefit it will produce for the poorest, least advantaged person that comes to your mind or that you know. And so it was thinking about the other, and especially people who have no power in the system. How would your existence in the world help them? Ethical reasoning needs to be, I think, brought into our companies for very sure, because our companies are run on the principle that if you make more money for your shareholders, then you're a good leader. And I think that's an unethical leader if you're just supporting yourself or your own tribe without benefit for others outside for yourself. The second you said from our Indian teaching is systems thinking. Our Vedas are full of, you're a part of a very complex, beautiful world. So systems thinking as an orientation, and don't get too verticalized, don't get too focused unless you understand where those verticals sit within a larger system. And the third one, which actually my grandson taught me when he came to visit the Planning Commission, and he was 7 years old and wondered what the Planning Commission was doing, any good at all with so much poverty as he saw all around India. He comes from the United States. And so I tried to explain to him that Planning Commission was, as you say, like a vertical. We got it in charge, and we're going to make sure that everything is all right in the country. And he just observed a little bit, and he's 7 years old. And he wrote a book on the Planning Commission, Adam, when he came back to school in the US, but what he did in the summer, And in the book, he began to call it the planning community. And he said, the planning community is a place where all the poor people of India can come, and there will be someone there to listen to them. And then they will not be poor anymore. And I realized we don't really listen to people who we think are not educated, or people for whom we have to do something. They don't know, and that is why they are like that, and I better do something for them. I'm not listening to even the supposed beneficiaries of my work. And certainly we don't listen to people not like ourselves. So about India, which is such a diverse country, we better start listening to each other. Muslims to Hindus, the Hindus to Muslims, and the poor to the rich, and the rich to the poor, and the people who speak Tamil to the Singh. This country, our country, will not work harmoniously together unless we learn to listen to people not like ourselves. And I'm so sorry that, social media is just making the problem horrible. Yes, we have probably getting to the largest numbers of smartphones in the world and the largest numbers of WhatsApp and stuff. So I'm going to ask you for advice. Now, here's the situation, Adam. What should one do?
I realized that this principle of verticality and horizontality, power and love, as I've called it in other contexts, are not adequate. And there is a third principle that's required, which relates to the ethical reasoning. And the third principle is justice. That if we only talk about vertical and horizontal, we're talking just about, well, how can my unit work in a way that works with other units? I mean, that's the essence of those two principles. But the third principle is, and how does it allow everybody to breathe and to grow and to live? And it's the interplay between these three imperatives that I think is the recipe, the not straightforward recipe, but the recipe for moving forward together. Moving is power, forward is justice, and together is love. And so if our work, or the way we're thinking about leadership, is how to help people move forward together, we need all three principles. And the vertical and horizontal, the power and love, will tend to reinforce the status quo. And that third principle that you attributed to Mahatma Gandhi is required if there is to be progress, rather than simply rearranging the deck chairs on a system which is producing results that are unsatisfactory.
Albert Einstein had said that we cannot solve the intractable problems that we have with the same approach that has caused the problems. And I just read a study done by the Social Progress Initiative, which is a Washington-based think tank, and they projected scenarios that if we keep carrying on with our combination of vertical, horizontals, whatever approaches we are using, it will take us until 2082 to achieve the SDGs. And we know we'll be fried as humanity long before that. We have to have a very different approach to what? And the 17th SDG, I mean, the first 16 are about environmental issues and social issues. The 17th says partnerships, and it's such a simply said word, and we keep saying that. And so what we are delving into today is the essence of a collaboration which will change the design of the aeroplane in which we are flying together. I changed the metaphor from the Titanic to an aeroplane and we're all flying together trying to get somewhere. And if we have to reach these goals of the SDGs within the next 20-25 years, and we better do that, we better redesign the very plane in which we are. But that's the dangerous part, because we are part of something. There's power in that thing, and there are ways of thinking in that thing, and we can't jump out of it. We've got to work with the things as they are and help everybody to start learning to think differently and work together. So I feel in India, this approach is very necessary, that we allow people to address their local issues collaboratively, keeping in mind the bigger picture of the SDGs, right? And everyone doesn't experience the SDGs in the same ways in different parts of our country, for example. So we need local collaboratives, and these are what I call the fireflies. I mean, there are people who with their own small energies on the ground produce light for each other and together. And so India will light up by fireflies arising, rather than people from the top trying to coordinate this very complex country with the power. Am I on the right track, or what did you say?
Well, there's not the right track is I don't think ever a simple track, but yes, I think we need more and better collaborations and partnerships, but that requires in turn is more and better facilitation, and in particular not falling into the habitual either the vertical or the horizontal. And so that's the kind of facilitation we need to get the collaboration we need to get the world we need.
An idea can change the world. All we need is intent, passion, and a desire to collaborate. If you have an idea that can transform or streamline governance systems, please send us the details and the specifics. A set of experts will assess the idea and help propel it towards reality. The sky is your limit. Don't wait. Mail us your idea or innovative thought at beinspired@teamworkarts.com.